State tournament my my nephew's junior year of high school. My oldest nephew, Franklin Garstin, he's wrestling for NBA. He got third in the state that year, and I remember Hunter was sitting to my left. I was in the middle, my brother was to my right. And when Franklin placed third in the state that year, won that match, I think Hunter saw how excited I was. And at that moment leaned over to me and said, "Dad, I think I'm maybe want to wrestle next year."
Hunter joined the wrestling team his freshman year. It was, I think, probably a month into the season. We had a tournament at Independence High School. And I had a conversation with his dad, and I really started to get to know the family at that point. You know, honestly, next tournament that we had was the Huntsville tournament. We went down to Huntsville, and Hunter was wrestling in the JV tournament.
I remember he packed his bag for the next day, and I still remember him getting out the car with his bag that morning because I was so worried about where he was going to put his stuff, and that's kind of the last memory I have of him walking. I'm sorry.
And 22.9 seconds into the first period, this injury happened. And it happened not 5 feet from where I was standing there with the camera. And there wasn't anything unusual about it. And then the referee called the pin, and his opponent got off of him. And I remember, when I watched the video later, the first thing you see Hunter do is raise his head, and he looked to his legs.
I got a text about 1 o'clock that something was wrong, and then I got a phone call from his dad, and he told me that they were in an ambulance and that he had hurt his neck somehow, and that he was saying he couldn't move his legs.
Asking the doctor, "Well, what do you mean?" He was saying, "My son's not going to walk again." He said, "I'm saying that the chances of your son walking again are slim to none." Hunter was so calm about the whole thing. There was no panic. There was no fear in his eyes. It just a complete calm washed over him.
And I told Hunter, as long as he's fighting, I'm fighting. And I think sometimes he says, you get even more upset than me. He's like, I'm sorry, I hate to see you upset. And he says, this is just part of this world, things I have to deal with. Which I think is so brave and mature that he's come to that point and acceptance that he can say those things to me.
The difficult thing for me as a dad was trying to watch Hunter process this, because I didn't know what it was like for him. I couldn't tell him anything that was going to make him feel better. I couldn't fix it. And so I wanted to be outspoken about the sport. And here's a dad, his son has suffered this catastrophic injury, and coincidentally Dad was also a wrestler, and I wanted to tell all of the parents in this gymnasium, don't be afraid of this sport. This sport is doing things for your child. You may not realize it now, you may not realize it in 5 years. You'll realize it eventually. And I also wanted to tell these wrestlers, don't be afraid of this sport. If it does for you what it did for me, it's going to shape your life.
I remember that very first night that it happened, and the doctors immediately saying all these things Hunter probably wasn't going to be able to ever do again. And seeing what he is able to do now is so inspirational. The amount of limitations they thought he was going to have in his life, he's shattered those. He's gone way past those, and he keeps trending up, which is phenomenal to be a part of. I mean, he has bettered himself. He has grown just like any high school student is supposed to. He's on track to graduate. He's going to graduate here in a couple weeks. He's going to go on to college. He lives an independent life. He does so many amazing things. I'm just so incredibly proud of him.
He has worked so hard to be independent. He could have given up from day one. He could be in a power chair. He could not be driving. Someone could still be feeding him and dressing him, but he made the decision early on, I do not want to be a burden on my family. And he still, I saw his bucket list he had written, here for a senior project, and they were so unselfish. The things he had written to be able to have a good job, to pay his family back, and to do things for the community and help people like he had been helped. And so it was just so touching to me that he feels like he owes people something when he's bared the biggest burden.
I've asked myself so many times, you know, how in the world could I do what that kid has done? Despite the trials and tribulations. I asked him one time, how is it you get up and do what you do day in and day out? He's like, well, it's just what I'm supposed to do. And I said, no, you're not doing that because that's what you're supposed to do. But you get up every day and continue to press forward. That's not something you're doing just because you feel like you got to do it. No, that is determination, that's motivation, that's mental toughness.